Then the wave of demonic missiles was launched once more against Gilgamesh. This time, the missiles were even greater in number and strength, and therefore also more deadly than before. This time, Gilgamesh was aware that the attack had become quite dangerous, the power within him had increased and he was capable of destroying any other high-class beings. A mere block, blow and reflection this time would not work. He has to destroy it this time. Which wasn't that hard, actually. His grip on the swords tightened, and he took a step forward as he swung his arm, breaking a missile flying toward him. Then he took another step and moved his hand again, crushing another missile and turning them into nothing but particles of green light. So he moved. His movement was slow, only a second per step, and yet his hands moved faster than before, faster than a devil that has a night trait. Their swords twirled in their arms as if they were dancing, moving gracefully, slicing, breaking, crushing, destroying and breaking all missiles and demonic bullets like a wooden stick meeting an iron sword, like a broken glass under the pressure of the steel. He kept moving as he did this. Diodora's eyes widened even further, shock and disbelief showing on his beautiful face as he witnessed the sight before him. How? How can this be? How could this dirt do that? Impossible. 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 You're just a filthy human. A rotten dragon. He screamed in anger, however, you could tell there was an edge of fear in his voice. Gilgamesh was silent through all of this, his eyes focused on Diodora as he took a slow step forward and crushing every attack Diodora launched. At that point, his attacks were nothing more than pure power. There were no flaws or beauty in them, they were simply explosions of demonic energy that were shaped and released. Gilgamesh had no problem dodging attacks from ultimate class or even Satan class devils. So an attack of that level was clearly not a problem for him. Enough. Gilgamesh crushed another magic missile that was launched at him, then kicked the ground and launched himself at Diodora with a speed that matched the movement of his hands, all the while blocking the countless missiles coming towards him. Diodora didn't have a chance. He was very focused on using his magic and clearly didn't expect Gilgamesh to suddenly run to him. He tried to create some distance, but Gilgamesh was already in front of him. Spinning his body, his leg was lift times 10 and collided with Diodora's face. And for a moment it was held there in time. His left leg was pressing into Diodora's cheek, and Gilgamesh could see that some teeth were being dislodged under his kicking force, and Diodora's mouth began to leak blood. It was followed by the sound of bone breaking from Diodora's cracked jaw. That clearly hurt. Then, time hit once more, and Diodora was flung backward, crashing into the tree behind him, breaking it before crashing into another and then onto the next. It was safe to assume that Diodora clearly felt this and it was clearly painful. If he were a normal human, his neck could have rotated 360 degrees and broken. Diodora was in pain, he clutched his face as he moaned painfully. His jaw was broken, not to the level he couldn't speak, but it was clear that part of his was broken. He did not understand. His mind couldn't understand how all this could happen. How can a human possess so much power? Even though it was boosted gear, he was just a filthy human. How could he hurt you like that? Impossible. 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 Pathetic. The devil of the Astaroth family looked up and saw the filth approaching him, his stoic face turning into an expression of disgust. When I learned that you are the brother of the current Beelzebub, who supposedly surpasses even his predecessor, I thought you would be quite a challenge. Cheat, you can possess the power of a high-class devil, but you can't use it, you don't know how. All you know is to play it like it's some kind of toy and laser. You don't have battle experience. And judging by his wounds, I believe it was the first time he broke his bones. He closed his eyes as he shook his head, as if looking at him would have a headache. Pathetic. Shut up. Diodora yelled, enraged, who do you think dares to say that to me? I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you. There's nothing left of you. I'm going to kill your friends, your parents, and your entire family. I'm going to dash. I'm not in the mood to listen to your idle threats. Gilgamesh interrupted him, his eyes opened a little, I'll give you a chance. Charge your attack, pour all your power into it and drain all the strength from your mind in one attack. Show me your best, I accept. Unimaginable fire and anger surged through Diodora's mind. How dare he? To degrade and criticize him like that. This one. This dirt. Enough. He wouldn't be ridiculed anymore. This man would die. In a way or another. He would die now. You're going to die, mutt. You're going to pay. You're going to suffer. I'm going to kill you. He yelled as he raised both hands in front of him. Green magic circle formed around them, followed by green light and yellow particles of demonic energy. It whirled around in his arms like a cannon being loaded. Gilgamesh looked silently at this. He then raised both hands, his swords armed and ready. I am Diodora of Clan Astaroth. Baea. A huge torrent of green demonic energy spun as a white beam was launched at Gilgamesh. Destroyed everything in its path, leaving nothing behind. Gilgamesh raised both swords protectively and collided with the destructive force. With a small battle cry, Gilgamesh moved his hands. His swords cut the attack in two and diverted them to different paths, one to the right and one to the left, leaving him completely unharmed. He took a moment to regain his posture before breathing calmly and steadying himself. Then he raised an eyebrow at Diodora. Is that it? Diodora clearly didn't know what to say after witnessing this. His shock went to another level and Gilgamesh was sure that his eyes could come out now, as they were wide open. Even a mouse could also enter his mouth, as it was also open, indicating that his mind could no longer grasp his current situation. Impossible. He whispered in a very low tone before his face turned into an angry one. Impossible. I'll take it as yes, and I think it's my turn now. Gilgamesh simply spoke before running towards the enemy. Diodora saw what was happening and was instantly seized with panic. Both hands came forward and summoned a magic circle, which formed a wide, rectangular green wall just in time to block Gilgamesh's attack with the golden sword. Ha ha ha. You see. You see. My powers are better than yours. He declared happily when his shield completely blocked Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh just stared in silence. Then his hand moved back, his silver sword scattering into golden flecks. And it dissipated. He quickly searched the gate of Babylon for a particular weapon and summoned it. The golden aura appeared again, expanding and exceeding the length of his sword while also becoming thinner. When it was solid and clear, the flame went out and revealed a red spear 2 meters long. It was not an ordinary spear, it was a spear capable of piercing any projection made from magical energy. It was a spear that belonged to the legendary knight of Fianna, Dire Muid Ua Duabitni, or also called Dire Muid of the Point of Love, the spear Gi Dirg, the Crimson Rose of Exorcism. Gilgamesh took the spear as soon as he appeared. With proper posture, trying to imitate Fianna's knight, he aimed his spear at the green shield that covered Diodora. The barrier dropped like a hot knife cut through butter, clearly not capable of standing a single chance at such a weapon. The spear didn't stop there and continued, also cutting Diodora's hands, sending them flying before landing on the ground with a disturbing thud, followed by blood gushing from the wounds that wet the ground. Diodora looked down at his handless arms. His eyes widened in shock and it took a second for him to start screaming like a maniac. He started to stumble backwards as he continued to stare at his arms covered in blood and dripping onto the floor. My arms! My arms! My arms! Another swoosh. Stab. Pain. Pain. Much pain. The pain was worse than anything. He had never felt so much pain before. Diodora let out another scream as he fell to the ground. There was so much pain in his stomach now, as if someone had burned his gut from the inside out, melting everything inside him like there was no ice to puddle. From the heat. He raised his head as he coughed up a huge amount of blood and saw a sword. A sword was piercing his body and pinning him to the ground. But it wasn't an ordinary sword, it was a holy sword. Smaller it might be, but it was stronger than an ordinary light sword and had a lot of holy energy, so it could be called a holy sword. Horror immediately flashed across his face when he saw the sword that was deadly poison to his kin. How does it feel, devil? Gilgamesh asked as he approached Diodora, who was writhing in pain and had a horrified look on her face. The feeling of having the sacred and light element inside you. It hurts, doesn't it? He asked again, a smile slowly spreading across his face. Judging from your face, you've clearly never felt this in your life before, right? He laughed happily, enjoying Diodora's pained look. Diodora tried to utter words, but there was nothing coming out, except for another scream of pain when he felt something cut his legs, but unlike when his arms were cut, he felt a very hot pain in his legs. Gilgamesh just watched with a stoic face as he slashed Diodora's legs with a holy sword. The separated limbs smoked like ice meeting hot water. He took one of them and then lifted it, showing Diodora that he felt nothing but agony. Do you see that? This is your leg, I just cut it off, he stated as he waved in Diodora's face as if it were a book and not a member. Let me tell you, Diodora, when humans die, they will go to heaven, hell, or purgatory. As for supernatural beings, I don't know what will happen, maybe they are reincarnated, and even the devil might be. I'm sure. He raised the holy sword and pointed at Diodora's leg and then it stabbed. When demons are hit by a sacred element, their soul or body part will be annihilated, it will be reduced to nothing. Nothing remains, not even memories, he told the demon, and as soon as he hit his leg, he turned into nothing but smoke, in ashes. Do you know what that means? Horror was the only thing Diodora could feel after witnessing what happened with his limbs apart. Even with the pain in his stomach, arms, and legs, the horror of his fate overcame them all. He would die. Not. He doesn't die. He would perish. He would be gone. He would be turned into nothing. His soul is gone. Why you can't? To Emamu's brother. If you kill me, you used your date to fight the coming exorcist, right? Gilgamesh interrupted him in an indifferent tone. Are you confident they will win? Let me tell you, the exorcist is not just an ordinary exorcist. He is Cardinal Deacon Ewald Cristaldi. He told the devil, heightening the horror of Diodora. he faced ultimate class demons and won his match. They all won't stand a chance against him. And you want to know the best part? His lips curled into an evil smile that would make original Gilgamesh praise him. All of them are ex-nuns, they will be captured and interrogated. Then information will be revealed about how you snuck into church territory and corrupted the holy maidens. This one. That couldn't be. This one. That was. Yes, your actions will be revealed and the church has every right to kill you. You've dragged the nuns down, over a dozen of them, and now you've tried to get another one during the rescue mission. When the church reveals that, to the devil's side. He paused to add to the dramatic effect, there will be no hope for you. You will die here and be turned to nothing, bathed in darkness forever, unable to feel any muscle in your body. He smiled at him, isn't it wonderful? He asked in a very happy, jovial tone. Diodora clearly didn't know what to say. Calling the current situation a horror would be too good, too light. His situation was worse than bad. And no. Diodora whimpered, tears starting to well up in his eyes, please. And no. Please. Gilgamesh showed no sign of sadness at seeing Diodora's tears, and he didn't consider his words either, his face was stoic and he stared at him coldly. No, the despair, Diodora. Despair you caused those nuns and maidens you contaminated. Diodora, feel, taste, enjoy, he said coldly, because when you turn to nothing, the feeling of despair will be better than that you will feel. And no. Please. Diodora was openly crying, fear seized his heart. How? How did this happen? He didn't want to die. He didn't want to turn into anything. He didn't want to. I'll give you anything. Money. Power. Honor. Squelch. His appeals and offers turned into a gurgle as Gilgamesh thrust the sword directly into his mouth, piercing his tongue and passing behind his head. He tried to speak and scream, but nothing came out of his mouth. He let out a moan before his body squirmed and then went limp. Then, slowly, his body melted, letting out black steam as it happened. His remaining leg dissipated, followed by his hands, body, neck, and continued until there was nothing left of him. Diodora Astaroth, brother of Ajoka Beelzebub and heir to the Astaroth clan, perished. While it was calm outside, when he finally saw Diodora's remains slowly perish, Gilgamesh didn't lie and try to deny it, but he clearly took a sick pleasure in watching Diodora die and disappear. Pulling the holy sword away, he closed his eyes and let all his muscles and tendons relax, bringing him back to normal. Maybe it made Ajoka Beelzebub's and Diodora's parents sad, but it was worth it. After what Diodora had done to the innocent nuns and all the holy maidens. It was just justice. It's over. Gilgamesh slowly rose when he heard that familiar voice. He turned and saw Ewald, followed by Asia, Mordred, Enkidu, Valerie, and Sabas. They had hidden the girl and told her not to look at what Gilgamesh was going to do with Diodora. He didn't want the girl to be afraid to see her cold side. It wasn't like he was trying to hide it, he'd killed Rainare in front of her before, but what he'd done to Diodora was something else. He didn't think Asia would be ready for the brutality he displayed in Diodora. Yet. And his peerage, he asked back. Resolved, everyone is being restrained with magic and I've already called the church, they'll be here in 15 minutes. Ewald informed me with a nod. After we confirm Diodora's actions through the testimony of all the old maidens and nuns, we will have enough proof and motives to kill him, even if he was the brother of a Moor, he told the young man who nodded with satisfaction. Gilgamesh-san. Asia called out in concern, are you hurt? Is there somewhere for me to heal? She offered and Gilgamesh turned to her with a smile. I'm fine, thanks for the offer, Asia. Gilgamesh replied gently, making the girl blush a little, but a smile decorated her face. I'm glad you're all right. She responded warmly. Ewald looks at the interaction with a small smile, seeing such a peaceful sight always feels good. He glanced briefly at the floor that was smeared with a pool of blood. He could tell by the way it was marked that someone had been lying there recently, dying perhaps with that much blood, but there was no trace of a body there. Did he kill the devil with a holy sword? He was not surprised if Gilgamesh had done this. For regardless of his age or appearance, the man in front of him was a monster who had earned the title of strongest exorcist, someone so powerful that he was feared like a beast on the battlefield. He truly deserved his title as the Golden Beast of Destruction. Ah, Gilgamesh-san, yes. Gilgamesh asked when he turned to Ewald and saw the cardinal handing him back the sword he had lent him. I'll give it back to you, it's an excellent sword. Ewald said that the Excalibur rapidly was being held by Asia and covered with a seal to prevent it from radiating its power. Once he was done with Diodora's pears, he went to take Asia and retrieve the holy sword. Gilgamesh took Ewald's sword and nodded, giving him a small smile. Thank you, Gilgamesh said simply. He looked around and sighed. It's finally over. He said, smiling a little seeing how there was nothing left to worry about. No, it's not. Gilgamesh replied, causing Ewald and Asia to turn their gaze to him. Asia here hasn't made its decision yet. He said as he looked at Asia, who instantly stiffened. It was true, so far Asia had not made its decision. She said she would tell them when the plan was over, as she was still in trouble, but to be honest, she still hadn't decided. She wanted to go back to church, she really did. Being able to pray to God, help people, see people smile when she's done helping them, and receive blessings from the angels and from God. Not to mention Gilgamesh has already made them agree that this time she would be freer. It would no longer be treated as a tool. She would be sent to school and be able to enjoy life and meet other holy maidens. It was a real blessing. The Lord must have already heard your prayers. Her dream would come true. True, it wasn't perfect, as she was sure people around her would still treat her with more respect or simply like a healer, but she was sure it would be better than before, at least. But if she came back, an image of Gilgamesh, Valerie, Sabas, Inkiju, and Mordred flashed through her mind, the time they spent together, the smiles they shared, the laughs and activities they experienced, however short. But if she stayed with them, the path she would have to follow would be difficult. Gilgamesh-san said that and even admitted that it wouldn't be easy. Could she do that? Now there was a chance of salvation for her, a chance that she could be happy. Even though Gilgamesh-san had saved her life and helped, was she willing to sacrifice her dream and happiness? Back to church? Or stay with them? She looked at Ewald and Gilgamesh, who were looking at her expectantly. The cardinal gave her a gentle smile, the one a father used for his children. Gilgamesh, meanwhile, just stared at her with an impassive face, showing no sign of emotion. But Asia knew who she was going with. Regardless of everything she had in the church, it was because of what she had. She was only called the Holy Maiden for her healing power. Asia loved to help people, but that's it. Gilgamesh's group, on the other hand, accepted her for who she was, not what she possessed. With them she could have something she always wanted. A family. Sorry Crystal D-sama, but I'm staying with Gilgamesh-san, Asia said blushing as she bowed slightly. Ewald just smiled at that, he knew it would happen. Don't worry child, you made the right choice, said Ewald smiling at the girl. Gilgamesh, take good care of her, said the priest to Gilgamesh. I will, said Gilgamesh with a smile at Asia. I think I'll go then, says Ewald as he turns and leaves. When Asia would talk to Gilgamesh, a blur to get in the way by throwing himself against her. I knew you were going to be Asia-chan, cries Valerie ecstatically. Everyone was smiling, even Sabas had a smile on his face. Very well to receive her, let's have a feast, shouts Mordred, accompanied by Inkiju and Valerie, while Gilgamesh and Sabas face Mordred. Asia smiled to see them arguing about what food to cook while Gilgamesh and Sabas told Mordred to clean up the mess. She couldn't be happier. After all, this is the family that took her in. Her family. So. I looked at Sana with amusement in my eyes. What's the need for you to call me again today? I asked. It's been a week since Diodora disappeared into my hands. After everything is back to normal, I go to school as usual, go train with Mordred, spend time with Asia. As I did so, I knew there was a conflict between angels and devil over Diodora's death. I don't know the details, but Ewald just sent me a secret letter last night about it. It's like what he promises me. He never mentions that I was the one who killed Diodora, so it technically becomes the church's responsibility. It wasn't hard to get Diodora's girls to talk, because they talk about how Diodora saved them from the church's cruelty, which instantly sealed Diodora's fate and proof that Diodora infiltrated the church area and seduced them. The church immediately revolted after that, and also some questioned why Asia should be brought back after what she did. It was Vasco and Ewald who came to her defense and explained all about how Diodora's presence affects her, and they try to corrupt the maiden only to fail midway. Of course they didn't say that on the devil's side. If they brought it to the devil, it will arouse suspicion on the devil's side and they can get quite angry to see their devil who has special power die, while actually it doesn't pass of excuse me. Vasco told about the Diodora case to the Pope of the Church, who in response denounced him directly to heaven for help, considering that Diodora was Ajuka's brother and… well, let's say Michael is clearly not satisfied with what he heard. I don't know the details, but he said that one of the Seraphim will be meeting Sertsk and Ajuka directly 3 days ago and will discuss it with them. He said the Seraphim is really angry and even accuses them of trying to invoke war once more. It can't be helped, Diodora had infiltrated church territory, where the truce agreement was held, and not only that, he stole and corrupted their holy maidens and nuns, which was a very big violation of their peace agreement. And truce for a moment. No matter how great Diodora's position is, even though he is a brother, his act was very dangerous and risky. Hell just passed the civil war, and they can't afford to have another war now. I just want to ask how your condition is. I heard that church girl hooked up with you. Sana asked me. Ah. So that's about it. When she calls the student council office once again, I'm worried devil knows about my act and me who ruled out Diodora, or they've sent someone to investigate me. As far as I knew, I left no trace. Sana here didn't know about Diodora who was rescuing Asia in the first place. After all, I contacted him using Asia's phone. That man gave her his number. All I did was call him using the phone and then the boo, he came instantly as I expected. So how did Diodora know that Asia needed to be saved? Well, the blame fell on Diodora, as no one knew, not even his peers. Apparently he just said they would rescue Asia and didn't say anything else. Cut the crap, Sana, I knew that's not the real reason you're calling me here. I said straight to the point and Sana let out a sigh like she was agreeing with me. While it's true, that's not the real reason I was calling you here, but at least I'd like to know how you feel. Why? Do you care about me? I chuckled a little, leaning back in my seat. Did the Ice Queen's heart melt in the presence of the King of Kuahu? Sana squinted her eyes a few times, although her face was still stoic, she was clearly unhappy with what she heard. Okay, don't answer. She said with a look, and it made me laugh some more. I'm just playing with Sana. Call me Kaiku. I'm fine. Nothing to worry about, so you don't have to worry about me, Sana. I continued as if she never said my words, causing her to shoot me another look, which made me amused. Where's Tsubaki and everyone? They are busy with something else. Sana waved a hand dismissively, making my brow furrow. Do you know me without your guard? That was very brave of you. I commented with a small smile. It's not brave, but it's a sign of trust. Sana corrected me. I trust you, you won't hurt me, I knew that. You already said you won't make a change for us unless we start first, and I trust your words. No. She closed her eyes for a moment before reopening it. I trust your pride and dream. She gave me a small smile. A hero after all won't hit someone who hasn't done anything wrong, right? I blinked at her words. This was clearly unexpected. I never thought she would bring my dream and ideal like that. Smiling slightly, I shrugged at her. Well, if you put it that way. Sana just let out a small laugh at my response as she crossed her arms on the table. She adjusts her glasses and gives me a look. Back to business. The reason I'm calling you here is because I want to know, why didn't you inform me that there are church people coming here? Especially you, old Cristaldi. She asked stoically as she put in a lot of tone. In the last part. I knew it, I already have a prediction about it. If there is any question, she will ask me what is it. Ewald was a big one from the church faction. For him to come here, a place where Mrs. Sisters personally were a big move. It was the same as Mo coming from the church out of nowhere. It was a very risky action. I'm sure the devil's side will ask for an explanation, but since they were on the losing side, since Diodora, Ajoka's brother, was hiding in their place at the same time, and not just once, but more than once a dozen times. They cannot speak unless they wish to worsen their position. Well, it's not like I'm supporting the church or anything. You know I don't like them either, seeing what they've done in Asia before. I give a little shrug as I sip the tea that's been brewed for me. As much as Asia wants to come back, this is also a secret mission, as there is a faction that opposes Asia, making the Crystal Descent mission unofficial and seeing your position if your presence was heard by you. No, you are guaranteed not to report it to its value instantly. I have a drink of tea, not as good as mine, but tolerable at least, and if you did that, the mission will fail. But in doing so, you take a big risk, Gilgamesh-san. Sana replied in a firm tone. We abandoned all our informal conversation and got serious. There is no guarantee that Ewald Cristaldi only wants to recover Asia Argento, as we know he could do something dangerous for my relatives. If he did this, I will stop him. I simply reply with an indifferent tone. When he came to Asia, he attacked a friend of mine. Mordred arrived just in time and defended her. Sana's eyes widened and the slightly open jaw was clear, indicating she was surprised, of course. She clearly doesn't expect Mordred to be able to stand up to Ewald Cristaldi, who was quite famous in her family. Don't be surprised that Sana knows about Mordred. When Sana asked me about her, I said Mordred was a great swordsman. Sana doubted it, and then Mordred had a match against Kiba in which she crushed him, proving my story. She had an advantage. After all, Ewald wasn't with all his power, I say with an amused tone, although Mordred isn't 100% either. Does he not have all his power? He only wields one sword, normally he wields more. Mordred could bring him down in his state back then. I explained simply as I waved my hand. I see. Sana's face creased thoughtfully. If he's still capable of killing you, Rias, and both of you groups at the same time, even though he's in that state. I cut her off with an indifferent tone, making her blink. What? You don't believe me? Well, I don't care, but I'm not lying if you want to know. That was a bold statement. Sana replied with a frown. What she said was true. I just declare Ewald Cristaldi, who only possessed Excalibur rapidly, is much stronger than them, and I could beat him, which means I declare that I was way above them. And that's also true. Ewald will be finished shortly. He's fast enough without a sword, and when he wields it, he can fend off several high-class devils at the same time. This sword may be just a shell of your former self, but it still contains a part of the real Excalibur in this world power. And in Ewald's hand, which could wield 3 fragments and probably more at the same time, that sword potential was fully unleashed. Especially if he went against devils, if he is able to graze devil with a single hit, I think it will be the end for them. That's why Sana and Rias here can't even beat him, at the current level they're going to die against him. Not that he's strong, but his skill, experience and mind were more than enough to fill his lack of power. If he wields 3 Excalibur fragments at the same time, I'm sure he'll be able to take on the Satan class, even if only for a moment. He really is someone to consider. I was just telling the truth. That's the only thing I can tell Sana, that I don't want to show you more about me. She just knew I'm good with weapons, able to fight melee and able to use boosted gear, but that's it. Since boosted gear is the only long news of mine she knows. Though I don't think it's long before she connects the dots that I'm the same person who fought Sarayorg and tamed Regulus Nemia. So it's clear if she's surprised, if I use boosted gear, our fight will clearly be loud and destructive. Boosted gear wasn't a power you could use without causing confusion after all. And the only thing she knew about Mordred's abilities was about Clarent and his great skill with her. Sana didn't answer me, just frowned, her violet eyes staring into my crimson, her face stoic as if she was judging my existence. I see. Well, I think I have enough information already. She grunted as she nodded after a moment of silence. Is there anything else I should know? Nothing, you can go if you want. Sana has forgiven me and I'm no longer wasting my time. Standing up, I give Sana a little bow before heading to the door of the student council office and leaving. With Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh was walking the streets of Kuah back home. He could teleport, but he liked to take a walk. The city was relatively still and with little movement. Gilgamesh sighed, knowing the real reason why Sana had called him. At least once a day Sana tried to talk to him and the reason is obvious. The devil faction, no doubt they ordered Sana to monitor, and it's not surprising, after all he carries a long Enus and is also descended from a legendary hero. Gilgamesh has no doubt that at one time or another one of them or members of high-ranking devils come after him. After all, they would not miss the chance to obtain a powerful ally who lives in their territory. Note the quotes because actually Kuah doesn't belong to the devils, not even Sana or Rias. The entire territory of Japan is owned and ruled by the Shinto gods, and that includes Kuah. In fact, the devils had an agreement to allow some of them to live here. And it wasn't Rias or Sana, the real ruler was Claria Belial. Apparently Claria was the ruler of the city until she fell in love with an exorcist and was hunted down and killed. After her death the Gremorus and the Citries took this city for them, more specifically Surtsks Lucifer and Seraphal Leviathan, who wanted to give this city territory for their sisters. And also of course because Sana knew about Mordred, she only knew that Mordred was a great swordsman. Sana even asked me if the people who live with him knew about the supernatural world and Gilgamesh affirmed it, though he didn't say anything else. After all, he doesn't want the devils to have more reasons to try to go after them. After all, if they discover Saba's and Enkidu's powers as well as Valerie's sacred gear, this would be problematic. Gilgamesh would have no problem if he had to fight the devils, but he preferred to avoid conflicts, though eventually they will discover his true identity. Sighing, Gilgamesh wondered when everything could settle down. He just wanted to have a normal day, but it seems trouble always finds him. This seems like one of those fanfics that people create for others to read, and the protagonist always has to get in trouble for the story to move. Gilgamesh opened the system to see the rewards he had earned. Quest completed. Titles: Pests in My Yard. Description: Kill Diodora Astaroth. Reward: 50,000 gold, 1,000 EXP, Kankara Formula, Sword Magic. Name: Kankara Formula. Type: Active. Rarity: Mega Rare. Level: 01/100. Cost of MP: varies. Description: Kankara Formula is specialized ability that grants you the power to control all phenomenon using equations and formulas. All phenomena and abilities that occur in the world have rules and laws, as he is able to get an answer by filling in the equations. Skills: the Kankara Formula allows the user to manipulate the phenomena that occur in the world using their magical powers to fill in the calculations of natural phenomena. By using a specialized magic circle, he is able to affect the outside world in a variety of ways. He demonstrated the ability to turn water blasts into mists and evaporate as he dissipated his attacks, turning the water beasts back to water and redirecting his attacks to the enemy. Note that user is able to take control of enemy attacks and calculate them to change them in a way that made it impossible for the enemy to disable them. Note that user could control their attacks better than the enemy. First, you must understand how magic works in DxD. Magic is the power born out of research into the devil's demonic power, which has also become a power humans can control. While there are many different types of magic, such as Norse magic, fairy magic, and many different types of magic with different equations, including the magic that the gods use, it is said that most of the magic used by ordinary magicians is made servant by the great magician Merlin Ambrosius, which involved reading the stream. There are several forms of magic, from sealing magic, teleportation, to fairy magic, white magic, Norse magic, among other different forms of magic, as well as divine magic, which belongs to the gods, is something that Gilgamesh is very adept at. for he is a demigod, though he rarely uses his pure, usually using it to boost his normal spells. Demonic power requires the power to use your imagination and the power to create, in addition to having common sense, while magic is just knowledge to control equations, that is, use your head and do calculations. So, although they may look similar, they are very different from each other. Magic is something where the user uses knowledge and calculations to know if I do this, it will happen. In one example, if a demonic power user wants to make a fireball, they just need to imagine a fireball and use their magic power to create it, as demonic power is based on imagination. If a magician wants to make a fireball, however, he needs to use formulas and equations to cause a reaction that would create the fireball. Gilgamesh is a great master of the use of magic. He learned many of them from sagas and from many spellbooks he has in the Gate of Babylon and others he has found around the world, in addition to the ones he copied from Sherinon. He even invaded Asgard looking for a specific one and ended up having a fight with Thor which he narrowly won, after which he had befriended the Thunder God and Odin. But that's history for another chapter. Although in the group he is not the best magic user in the group, after all Sabas was the one who taught him, and even Valerie is a tremendous user of magic with a giant talent that even surpasses that of many high-level demons. According to Sabas, Valerie is a very physical fighter, so she devoted a lot of her training in the use of spells. Now about the Kankara formula, it basically allows its user to manipulate any form of magic as if it were a computer system. User can rewrite various natural/supernatural magical phenomena, create something, or erase it, command magic to defeat his enemies. If it's about magic, the user can do almost anything, being able to erase, rewrite, create, destroy, control. Although there are limits, it's a scary technique. Ajoka Beelzebub usually uses this technique to gain control of the enemy's magic power and make them become self-destruct. Basically as a computer system, and the user is an administrator who runs everything. Gilgamesh can't help finding this skill kind of unfair, since it allows to nullify any magical phenomenon in the world. Another unbelievable thing is that Ajoka Beelzebub took centuries to master and perfect this technique, since Gilgamesh had imprinted in his mind how to use it step by step instantly, so he was able to interpret the world in the form of codes and equations. Gilgamesh almost felt sorry for the Mo who took centuries to learn and he only seconds. Almost. Name, Sword Magic Type, Active. Rarity, Rare. Level, 01/100. Cost of MP, varies. Description: this magic attribute allows the user to generate swords from their imagination, but the more powerful the sword, the harder it will be to create it. This spell also allows its user to use certain spells that allow them to unleash the true potential of each weapon by raising it beyond the limit. First of all, this magic is different from Shiro Emiya's Unlimited Blade Works. Although Gilgamesh is really looking to acquire Unlimited Blade Works for him, it would be a good fit with Gate of Babylon. This spell allows you to create weapons based on imagination, but it's not that simple. First you need to know how this weapon would be created and what materials would be used to form it, which is not that difficult considering that thanks to weapons proficiency Gilgamesh is able to understand everything about a weapon. Just as it is also necessary to know the capabilities and limits of a weapon. For example, it is not possible to create an invincible weapon because the stronger the weapon, the more magic power will be spent and more resistance too, and the more describable the weapon's ability, the more powerful she would be. If you create a sword that can cut anything, without describing its ability, it could be a weapon that only cuts humans or demons and other beings don't. So the more describable the weapon's capability, the more powerful it would be. Another thing is that it takes a considerable amount of time to create a weapon, so it is not possible to create them during battle. Also, if a weapon is created, it cannot be undone and needs to be stored somewhere. Gilgamesh had already made some weapons, but none with any notorious power. The two most powerful were one that had the ability to absorb and redirect magic and the other that could negate causality by cutting cause and effect so that it could nullify any spell and curse. But the main ability of this magic was to extract the true potential of each weapon. With the skill weapon proficiency, the user is able to master styles with it, but that doesn't mean he can use all the true power of a weapon, as technique and power are different, but this spell allows you to use the true potential of every weapon. For example, Durandal's ability to cut anything. Basically this spell is an improved version of Lick's Black Clover anime. Gilgamesh also won another award. Secret Quest completed titles, family description, make Asia Argento stay with her group. Reward, special summon card item. Apparently he had a secret mission. If Asia stayed with them it was finished, if she went to the church it wasn't. Needless to say, Gilgamesh already knows who he is going to summon with this card. Gilgamesh came out of his thoughts when he felt that various magical powers were approaching him. He wasn't a big tracker like Inkiju who could find water in a radius of 10 kilometers, but he was a good sensor. When he looked up at the sky he saw it change to purple as he was enveloped in a barrier. I just want a normal day that this shit happens. Sighs Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh felt the magical powers approaching him before they revealed themselves to be various people. They had different characteristics from each other, but they were all human, or at least possessed a human aura. One of them came forward and took the lead and looked at Gilgamesh and smiled. "It's nice to meet you, Sekurati," said the man in front who had black hair and blue eyes and wore a black coat, whom Gilgamesh thought was the leader. "Ho ho, you know me. Who are you?" questions the king of heroes as he narrows his eyes. The man laughs and raises his hands. "I'm not here to fight you, at least I don't have that intention, after all you are descended from a legendary hero and have a long inus," said the man while increasing his smile. "I am Hiroshi, a member of the heroes faction led by Cao-sama," said the man with a big smile. Gilgamesh's eyes widened slightly at this statement. Gilgamesh knew that sooner or later they would come after him, after all the possessor of the strongest long inus would not let the chance of someone like Gilgamesh escape. "The heroes faction, led by the wielder of true long inus, isn't it?" Gilgamesh questions and saw the man's smile widen. "Exactly, the faction created by our great leader to defeat supernatural beings. And I can't help but notice you, the descendant of the greatest hero in the world and still owning a long inus, it can only be fate," says the man with a big smile. Gilgamesh realized that this man spoke with great admiration to Cao. Although Gilgamesh was not surprised, he knew that people who did not willingly join Cao were brainwashed. "Fate, you say?" asks Gilgamesh curiously. "Exactly, seeing someone like you here is something unique. I admit that when I saw the devs behind you I got nervous, but when you put that devil in her place it was wonderful, something only a hero can do," said a man as he laughed as the people behind him did the same. Gilgamesh noticed that when Hiroshi had mentioned Rias he had spoken with great anger and disgust. But mostly because they were watching him, Gilgamesh knew there were people watching him and his headquarters was the abandoned shed, although he left it alone as it was too busy. "So you're the one watching me? Is your group also in the abandoned shed?" questions Gilgamesh. "Yes, after all we had to keep an eye on someone like you," said the man with a smile that was already irritating Gilgamesh. The king of heroes knew that the heroes faction was using the abandoned shed to monitor Rias and the others, but he didn't imagine they were watching from early on. "So enough talking. If you know about Cao-sama you must know his objective. So I ask you, king of heroes, current Sekurati, Gilgamesh, will you join us to defeat supernatural beings?" asks the man with a big smile because in his mind Gilgamesh has already accepted. "Does your leader know what you are doing?" questions Gilgamesh. "He doesn't know, so it will be a big surprise for him when you join us," said the man with a smile. "So your answer?" Gilgamesh sighs and says his answer. "I refuse." "Which? I don't think I heard right," says the man with confusion as everyone behind him has the same expression. "Don't get it wrong, I will protect the humans, but the method you use is ridiculous," says Gilgamesh as he looks at the man who has begun to rage. "The method used by your leader is ridiculous. Trying to prove yourself against the supernaturals? He looks like a child who has been given a new toy and wants to try it out. He's not a hero, he's just a spoiled brat," says Gilgamesh with his take on Cao. The expressions of the heroes faction members were pure rage. "Measure your words, Sekurati," said the man angrily as white flames appeared around him. Each of them had auras around them due to their anger. If Cao continues with this he will be a target that all the factions will try to eliminate and then he will be killed and the humans will no longer have protection. "He's not worthy to be called a hero," says Gilgamesh as he watched their anger build. All had their aura increased, although it wasn't very strong they emitted an aura of a medium and upper class devil. The leader, who was gritting his teeth in rage, was looking at Gilgamesh with a cruel expression. "If you don't come for good, we'll do it for bad," shouts the man, and as he raises his hand several magic circles appeared behind him, due to some of the humans being wizards. Others materialized their sacred gears, some had spears, some had bows and swords, some had flames and other elements and some had shadows growing around them. Gilgamesh took a quick look at the magic circles and momentarily activated his Sharingan and thus memorized the formulas behind each of them. This was a great use of Sharingan due to its photographic memory, so Gilgamesh could memorize the patterns and formulas of each spell. All magic circles glowed before triggering a multitude of spells of fire, wind, lightning, earth, ice, darkness, and even light. There were several spells that covered the sky. Gilgamesh only extended his right hand and in it appeared a triangular magic circle, all over it were various formulas and equations. This circle had the golden color. The moment their magic circle took shape a small golden aura enveloped the magic attacks causing them to stop in midair to the amazement of the heroes faction. This magic circle was from Kankara's formula. The biggest difference of this skill between Gilgamesh and Ajuka is that Gilgamesh's magic circle is golden and Ajuka's is green. At the time he was created, Gilgamesh used a pattern of equations and formulas to gain control of the enemy's magical attack. What? Questions the heroes faction members upon seeing their power stopped. With a wave of the hand from Gilgamesh the magical powers begin to move towards the enemy humans. The heroes faction members widened their eyes as they saw their powers come their way. They all quickly start dodging the bombardments that have started falling on them, they start getting out of the way or trying to hit back with their powers. Suddenly a big shadow emerges from the ground, making a barrier that absorbed the magical powers, making them disappear. Gilgamesh raises an eyebrow curiously at seeing this until he remembers which sacred gear is capable of this. Night reflection, Gilgamesh thinks with curiosity. Gilgamesh is brought out of his thoughts when he remembers another ability from this sacred gear. The night reflection is able to absorb and redirect attacks through the shadows. Looking back, Gilgamesh saw the wall of shadows rise and unleash all attacks again against him, and ahead of him, the hero's faction members were unleashing yet another wave of attacks through their sacred gears. Gilgamesh could use the Kankara's formula to control the attacks again, but unless he was serious the night reflection user would only bounce back against him, so Gilgamesh decided to be more practical. Bringing his hands together, and in the center of them appeared a blue sphere with several Roman numerals around it. Mana Zone, Chronostasis Grigora, spoke Gilgamesh, calling a spell of time magic. At that time all attacks that were aimed at Gilgamesh were surrounded by blue orbs with Roman numeral patterns around them and were paralyzed in midair. In this spell Gilgamesh had gained full control over the magic power in a certain region with his Mana Zone, and then cast his time magic, which captured anything that entered that space, trapping him in a time sphere where a time loop occurs, thus making the attacks stand still. Every member of the hero's faction was not believing that Gilgamesh had stopped their spells so easily. Seeing that they had no chance of winning if they weren't serious, they decided to use all their power, and together they said 2 words. Balance breaker. At that point a burst of energy erupted, gaining Gilgamesh's attention as seeing so many people achieve balance breaker at the same time, it was a rare sight to see so many users. Although they weren't long Inus, it was still rare to see so many balance breakers activated at the same time. All heroes faction members had visibly increased auras and their powers increased, some of them had new weapons, others had the elements around them. The leader, who was once manipulating white flames, now had an armor made of flames that burned everything around him. Gilgamesh knew which sacred gear that Flame Shake was. Flame Shake grants the user the ability to use pyrokinetic abilities by conjuring white flames from the hands and firing at the target. Presumably these flames burn hotter than normal fire but are useless against those with greater fire resistance like dragons and limbs from the Phoenix clan. We will take you to our leader whether you like it or not. And then let's keep your sacred gear, said the leader with a smile. In their mind they could win, even if it was difficult. After all, boosted gear can double the user's power every 10 seconds, but they only needed to win it before Gilgamesh could double or multiply its power. Of course the heroes faction didn't know that Gilgamesh had achieved balance breaker, because it wouldn't be much more complicated. Gilgamesh raised an eyebrow, but understood their plan. They probably wanted to take him to Cao to brainwash him, something the true Long Inus wielder had already done to other members of his faction. Then I must show you my power, says Gilgamesh, raising his left hand. All members of the heroes faction prepare to advance against Gilgamesh before he summons his Long Inus to double his powers, but what happens frightens them. The entire temperature of the environment starts to drop at a high rate, causing water droplets to become visible and ice to quickly form around them. The group leader quickly moved forward while raising his flames in an attempt to destroy Gilgamesh's ice, but the flames weren't doing anything, and so Gilgamesh decided to start. With a simple wave of the hand from Gilgamesh, Hiroshi has all his flames extinguished and frozen as his body is placed on a large block of ice. This ice was created by Long Inu's Zenith Tempest. The main and first sacred gear of Gilgamesh was the Zenith Tempest. It was listed as one of the 13 Long Inus and ranked as one of the first 4 having the power to destroy the world. Within the sacred gear hierarchy, Zenith Tempest occupied second place only below true Long Inus. Even among the Long Inus the Zenith Tempest was irregular. It gave the user's ability to control the weather and the elements of nature at will. With enough mastery the user was even able to create the elements freely. The ability to control the elements was so great that it could affect the entire world and destroy its balance. The fact that it is irregular even among Long Inus is the fact that it is very simple to use. The powers of this Long Inus respond to its user's willingness to manipulate the elements easily. For example, if you gave the booster gear to a person, it could multiply its power a few times before reaching its limit, having its power focused entirely on the user. On the other hand, if you gave Long Inus Zenith Tempest to a person, it would easily be able to sink an entire city, creating an endless rain. After all, its power is not focused on the user but around him, in the whole world. After all, with this Long Inus all extension of the world can be used by its owner. Although powerful, it also had a limit on how much its user could manipulate the elements. The limit would be the user's physical and mental ability to command the elements. The elemental manipulation ability of this Long Inus was surreal, reaching the divine level. It was easy for the user to turn a desert into a frozen tundra, or general flames as hot as the sun. And Gilgamesh doesn't leave it for less. His affinity with Zenith Tempest is surreal, to the point where Arashi puts Gilgamesh as his strongest and most potential host. Gilgamesh's affinity with Arashi was such that not even the goddesses who reincarnated him could imagine. It was as if they were both perfect for each other, the proof of which is that when Gilgamesh was born he had awakened his sacred gear. Although rare, it's not an impossible event, as it all depends on the user's affinity with their sacred gear. Because if you think all 13 long Enus are the apex of a sacred gear, with the power to kill gods, but there has never been a report of a long Enu's user who actually killed a god, at most an ultimate class being. The answer to that is here, just as Excalibur chose King Arthur. The 13 long Enus can only be truly wielded and used to their full potential by a chosen few. Only a few people are able to bring the long Enus to their true power, something hard to find considering that there are more than 7 billion people in the world and only 13 long Enus. But that's what Arashi, the conscience of long Enu's Zenith Tempest, found in Gilgamesh, someone capable of taking her to her full potential. The fact that explains why Gilgamesh was born with his sacred gear unlocked. Another case of this would be Tobio Acus, the long Enu's user Canis Lycon, who was born surrounded by the dense darkness of his long Enus, as he had gone beyond Gilgamesh, as he was born with his balance breaker awakened, which resulted in his grandmother sealing his sacred gear not to cause problems. The same happened with Gilgamesh, his affinity was so great that even unconsciously using the power of his long Enus the results were abnormal. The Zenith Tempest responded to his feelings, so when he was sad rains would occur, when angry storms would befall the land. This resulted in Seba sealing his sacred gear, as it wouldn't be long before some supernatural being tried to find him and the kill or enslave. When he awakened her again, power came with a vengeance, and over 10 years of training, Gilgamesh's dominance with her rose to the point where it could affect everyone, especially in her balance breaker. The same happened with boosted gear and Regulus Nemia. Even with a much shorter time of use, being 2 years with the Regulus Nemia and a few days with the boosted gear, Gilgamesh managed to bring this sacred gear to most of its potential. According to Drake, Gilgamesh had a great affinity for dragons, which Gilgamesh didn't know how, since Regulus said that he also had a great affinity for lions, which Gilgamesh deduced was from his blood. After all, Uruk, the city-state led by Gilgamesh, had a habit of training lions. So he managed to master Regulus Balance Breaker and even the breakdown of beast form without losing his mind, and still managed to achieve Balance Breaker Abyside. With the boosted gear, with the power of Drake, he was able to unlock all of Drake's power when alive, even his special abilities, Penetrate and Burning Flames of Burning Hell, in addition to mastering the Balance Breaker and the Juggernaut Drive. All the heroes' faction members widened their eyes at seeing their leader lose so easily. They quickly turned their eyes angrily to Gilgamesh but froze at what they saw. Gilgamesh's eyes were opaque and cold with stones of ice, giving the hero faction members shivers, so it came in a rush. A wave of murderous intent swept over the place and all the heroes' faction members froze. Some, who were still recovering from what they saw, immediately fainted from the strain on their heads. Others shivered where they were, trying to rationalize the feeling of dread that gripped them as they fell to the ground. Some came out on their hands and knees on the ground, eyes wide with terror as they saw their own death. It was as if they were in front of their own death, in front of a monster that would destroy them whenever it wanted, because the being in front of them couldn't be a human. But one thing in common was the absolute fear they all felt. The fear was such that their auras became destabilized and they couldn't keep their sacred gear. Although playing with you is fun, I'm in a hurry, said Gilgamesh as he took his right hand and pointed his index finger at them. His hand was covered in a purple aura as the feeling of death stagnated in the air. Gilgamesh only spoke one word that sealed their fate. Hakai, and true to his word, everything was destroyed. In a single instant, all the members of the heroes' faction were enveloped in a purple aura and they began to scream in pain and agony, until they began to dissolve into purple dust. In a mere instant the King of Heroes erased them from existence. Such was the power of destruction magic. This spell was taught to Gilgamesh by Sabas, its original user, a spell that allows the user to manipulate an energy with the ability to destroy anything. Although it is difficult to control, the destructive ability can easily erase beings from existence, even the soul of a person reaching the spirit plane. Although Gilgamesh did not erase the souls of the heroes' faction members, as they had something useful with him. This magic was something that Gilgamesh rarely used as its ability was difficult to control and it could hit allies and mainly kill anything that comes in contact, so he only used it when he was really sure of killing an enemy. The same with the Gura Gura no Mi, that its power reached everything indiscriminately and so Gilgamesh could not use it freely. If he used it, it is likely that the city of Kuah would cease to exist. Want to loot? Yes, no. Gilgamesh chose the yes option. Picked host received 32 sacred gear. Gilgamesh quickly made a list of the sacred gear and quickly analyzed each one. After looking he saw that none were interesting and placed them in the gate of Babylon. Sighing, Gilgamesh activated his Kanbunshoku Haki or observation Haki and felt some auras in the abandoned shed, probably from some hero faction members who decided to stay. Gilgamesh sighed, deciding either to work this out or ask Sabas to do it. He quickly made his way home as he still had something to do. In the house of Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh had arrived at his home a short time later. He had seen Asia, who was quite comfortable living with them now. The girl's training was going well too as she gained a greater understanding of her sacred gear and they were teaching her about magic. Valerie also trained more with her sacred gear to gain a greater hold of her and get used to her power. Gilgamesh is currently in his room waiting for Sabas to finish preparing a place for him to do an invocation. Gilgamesh's room was extremely large and with a lot of things in it. His parents hadn't spared any money when making it. It had a big bed, and also a bathroom with a bathtub, several shelves of books, some normal, others were spellbooks and books related to the supernatural that Gilgamesh had collected. They also had video games and many other kinds of pastimes for when Gilgamesh got bored. But what called the most attention was a desk in the bedroom, and on top of it was full of papers where he had drawn and written various formulas and equations for magic circles and also some projects that Gilgamesh was working on. Gilgamesh was always very fond of magic, and even won the title of Golden Mage, and he also had his fan club related to it, where he had some members who always sent questions about formulas and other magical subjects, something that Gilgamesh liked. Gilgamesh did as much as possible to answer, especially one of the Membe times Rs who wrote at least once a week. But what caught the most attention on the desk was a jewel that was standing on top of it and emitted a strong wave of draconic power. This gem emitted a great and constant draconic aura and a lot of magical power. Gilgamesh took the jewel while looking at it. It wasn't a normal gem, but it was a reward from a dungeon he made where his enemies were dragons. Apparently this gem had been guarded and protected for 1,000 years by several dragons who when they died bathed the gem in their blood and power, thus making the gem gain great power. Another feature was that it is able to store large amounts of energy, and even if it runs out it will come back. This gem also had a divine aura of Gilgamesh and the power of Drag that Gil extracted some of the boosted gear and put in it. All this for his latest project, as well as the most difficult one, where this gem would serve as battery and charge for his project. 5. Although it's been very tiring and difficult as it had several components and other formulas that he had to decipher to finish his project. After all, Gilgamesh was trying to replicate something that only the biblical god was able to do. Within seconds the Red Dragon Emperor's gauntlet, boosted gear, manifested in Gilgamesh's hand before Drake's voice came out activating his power. Boost, activated long in his power before its aura doubled and all that energy was transferred to the jewel. Transfer, the jewel had its aura increased before it returned to normal and Gilgamesh left it on the table. Sighing, Gilgamesh left the room to prepare the invocation. In the living room they were all gathered and sitting on the sofas. Inkiju and Asia were next to each other, and on another sofa there was Valerie and Mordred, and Sabas was standing behind them. Each one of them had a little sign in his hands. Regulus was also lying there in his lion form. Everyone was excited to see who would be summoned, apart from Mordred who only wanted to fight whoever Gilgamesh summoned. So who are you going to summon? Asks Mordred curiously. Gilgamesh just grins as he has the summoning card out of his hand. A golden portal opened beside Gilgamesh before a sword came out. It is a typical Western sword, 3 feet long and 4 inches wide, and it has fairy letters inscribed to show that it is not the work of humanity. Although there are many other noble ghosts created more splendidly and with better skill, this sword is an illusion far superior to them. It can't be called cute because of its appearance, as the description of beautiful will only make it dirty. Instead, it's sacred, made of people's conceptions, a legend woven purely of hope. It is not an inhuman myth or work, but a crystal trained only by the heart, making it the strongest fantasy realm. It is the crystallization of the prayer called glory, and all engraved in the hearts of those who are scattered under the sword's brilliance, the nostalgic, sad, and consecrated dream of those who were placed in the bloody hell called the battlefield, with all the warriors of the past, present and future fully exposed to the fear of death and despair, and who still cling to a desire, to be exalted. The sword of promised victory, Excalibur. Excalibur is a divine construct, the pinnacle of holy swords and the strongest holy sword, whose equal is the strongest demonic sword, Gram. One of the weapons forged by God, a last phantasm, forged by the planet as the crystallization of humanity's desires stored and tempered within the planet. It was guarded by extensions of the planet, fairies, before being briefly passed on to King Arthur by the Lady of the Lake and then returned to the lake before her death. Everyone recognized this sword immediately, especially Mordred, who wore an expression of disbelief. Gilgamesh smiled at their expressions, before Mordred began to scream. Not. You are not thinking about invoking her, screams Mordred, surprising everyone. Isn't that a good way to show you've changed, Mordred? Asks Gilgamesh coldly. Mordred is silent for a few seconds. It is good. It is good. But don't blame me if something happens, says Mordred, defeated knowing she couldn't beat Gilgamesh's opinion. Gilgamesh plays the card up until it is suspended in the air. Wishes to use Excalibur, sword of promised victory, as a catalyst. Gilgamesh nods his head before an explosion of energy occurs, raising a large cloud of dust. When the dust cleared, it was possible to see a woman who looked extremely like Mordred. In fact, it would be better to say that Mordred is extremely like her. The woman has the appearance of a slightly androgynous young woman in her teens, with a slender body, smooth skin, and green eyes. She has finely textured blonde hair that looks as if dusted with gold dust. Her face shows some signs of ingenuity and shows elegance. Relatively dark green eyes. She wears shining armor with an antique dress made of blue cloth, old-fashioned, underneath. That in front of them was Arturia, Pendragon, the king of Britannia, also called the king of knights and wielder of the strongest holy sword, Excalibur. After the dust settled, the woman spoke. I ask. Are you my master, says the woman as she opens her eyes, but what she was going to say died in her throat when she saw who was in front of her. Crimson eyes that belonged to a golden-haired man who stared at her with a big smile. That was the king of heroes Gilgamesh. In moments Gilgamesh appeared in front of Arturia, who couldn't even react due to her disbelief, and placing his hand on her face he raised it until he looked into her eyes. Gilgamesh had a smile so big it looked like it was going to come off his face. You really thought you could get away from me, Saber, said Gilgamesh with great amusement. You are mine. After these words only one thing crossed the mind of Arturia Pendragon. What's going on here? Saber, or Arturia Pendragon, couldn't believe what was happening. In front of her was the king of heroes Gilgamesh. Not long ago she was on the throne of heroes waiting to be summoned to obtain the Holy Grail and fulfill her wish. Only now she was panicked to see that it was Gilgamesh who had summoned her. The man who in the Fourth Holy Grail War prevented her from getting the Holy Grail and still claimed her with her, as if she were an object. Simply she was in front of one of the people she hates the most. As Arturia prepared to pull Excalibur and stab Gilgamesh into Gilgamesh's body, damn it, if he was her master, the king of heroes jumped back and raised his hands in surrender. Sorry about that, Arturia Pendragon, it was just a joke, said Gilgamesh with a small smile. Arturia's eyes widened slightly when she saw how Gilgamesh behaved. The way he spoke, turned away and even looked at her were completely different from the Gilgamesh she knew. It was like a completely different person from the Gilgamesh she knew. Her concentration was taken away by a great hysterical laugh. Arturia turned her gaze to the fountain and widened her eyes in disbelief. Mordred was lying on the floor laughing madly. How was she here? Why was she here? These were questions that haunted her mind. Looking at the other people there, she realized that there was another servant there. Before Arturia could speak, Gilgamesh took the lead. So what do you think of my acting? Questions the king of heroes to his friends, and each one raises a little sign with a note. Sabaz's had a 7, Asia's a 10, mostly because she wasn't getting it, Valerie's had a 5, and Mordred's with Inkiju a 10 as they smiled. Gilgamesh looked at Valerie, who gave a plus or minus sign. Gilgamesh, sighing, turned his attention to Arturia, who was still perplexed and wondering how they had other servants here and also how Gilgamesh was her master. It's a pleasure to meet you, Arturia Pendragon. I am Gilgamesh, descended from the king of heroes. Gilgamesh said, the man with a smile on his face. Then Arturia finally spoke her mind. What's going on here? She asks Gilgamesh, who smiles.